That's warriorsrevolution.com.
What's up, KHNC Patriots? Bucky Dillon here. If you're looking for a simple and free way to support the station, check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/1360KHNC. It really does help us reach a broader and younger audience, help us to awareness. Give the like, give the follow, give the share, invite your friends. You can watch the live streams, you can read the blog, you can share the news, you can join the conversation. You can join it via facebook.com/1360KHNC.
Hey, Larry Elder here. Thank you for listening to the Bucky Dillon Show, hosted by the Liberty Revolt and KHNC.
Good morning, good morning. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Bucky Dillon Show, our morning show, a collaborative between myself and the free-thinking, freedom-loving, free-spirited, moonshine-drinking patriot community right here in Northern Colorado. Guys, I'm back with Gavin. What's up, man? How you doing?
Good morning, Bucky. So good to be here with you again.
Cheers.
You're the master. You're becoming big time, huh?
It's true. I am the rising star of the freedom movement. And gosh, it's a good thing I work out because I have to fight these ladies off me all the time.
Yeah, I can see that. Rising star. Well, it's good to be in your glow, the glow of your rising star. It's good to be here with you again, and it couldn't happen to a nicer person. So I toast your success and look forward to a good conversation with you.
Right on. So, what you been up to?
Oh yeah, I did dip a toe in politics and ran for city council in Fort Collins, and that was an interesting. I lost in a really fantastic way. The district I ran for in District 3 was normally the safest for conservative voices, even though these are nonpartisan elections. But District 3 has always been the more conservative district in Fort Collins, and I lost it. I lost it for the first time in I don't know how many decades. It has gone to the other side. And again, I congratulate my opponent. She's basically a neighbor of mine, and she ran a great campaign. And I called her and congratulated her for running a great campaign. But I didn't lose by a little bit. I lost by a lot. And I think what we saw in Fort Collins this election was a just complete resurgence of the left.
Right.
And I think the left is now a solid grasp on the elected offices in Fort Collins and in Larimer County too. So it's been a real change, and it's happened very, very suddenly.
Yeah. Gosh. And not everyone is particularly excited about that. I know, obviously there's been talks about Weld County, Wyoming, and even my wife, who, when she came to this country, really considered herself to be she's not a political person necessarily. Being from China, most people aren't, but she really did feel, just because she was in the university and environment, she was a English teacher in the foreign students department, and just absorbing some opinions through the ether, she thought she was really on the left. And even she's looking at some of the things going on here and wondering, my goodness, should we buy a house here? We literally kind of got into it. And I don't mean like a fight, but had a conversation. And, I'm pretty excited about some of the things going on with my potential for a new career path here. And some of the people I've been meeting and in the direction things are going, it seems to be pretty exciting, but she's nervous about purchasing a house here in Greeley and mentioned to me, what would you think about renting our house out and moving back to China, and implied to me that I could make upwards of, the equivalent of $5,000 a month teaching English in China, and our rent would only be like $300 or the equivalency of in Chinese currency over there, and we'd be easily able to pay for our house here, plus rent it out, probably make a profit off that, and do trips and all kinds of things. And I was like, gosh, I just became full-time at the radio station. I just started really feeling some traction accumulating here, and it is really interesting to think about where this whole situation in Colorado is going, and what's in store next. I mean, there is nothing putting the brakes on.
Oh, yeah, and I'm eternally optimistic, but it has taken figure out the path forward, and we talked about this a little bit briefly just offline. I'm just really struggling to figure out where's the silver lining here. What's the opportunity? What's the path forward? It seems that we're going to, during the election, I was at a big gathering at this supporters' home. They were nice enough to have a bunch of their friends over, and someone at that gathering asked me, "What happens if you lose?" And I said, "Well, if I lose in District 3, then the whole city council will go left, because if I lose, that means the city's gone to the left in a big way." And that's exactly what happened. And I predicted several things would happen. One, and it was just mentioned over the news break at the top of the hour, there will be gun control legislation passed in Fort Collins, because the state legislature is going to pass laws that allow the cities to do that. But some cities around the country have started doing that anyways. Boulder, for example, and I think we talked about this last time I was on your show. Boulder has a ban on automatic weapons. They did nothing to prevent that guy from walking into a grocery store.
It's working out really well.
Yeah, it's of course it's not. And so so that will happen, because there's people on the Fort Collins City Council now who are very anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment, and they're going to use every tragedy as an excuse to impose some sort of gun control legislation in City Council. So that's certainly going to happen. Ranked choice voting is going to happen. The one person that did not on the right who won, and I put that in quotes because again these are not partisan elections, but the one. There.
All right, we'll finish that thought on the end of the break. Thanks for hanging out, guys.
I'm under attack.
KHNC listeners, this is Sam Shook, your Medicare licensed agent here in Northern Colorado. I want to thank you for your continued support and look forward to many more years serving you. I cannot stress enough, if you are getting into Medicare or have any Medicare needs, call me at 970-413-4939. If you have other insurance needs, such as life, dental, heart attack, cancer, and stroke, call me at 970-413-4939. Again, for Medicare needs, call me, Sam Shook, at 970-413-4939.
The Bucky Dillon Morning Show, it sucks. The Bucky Dillon Show Morning Show, it sucks. The Bucky Dillon Morning Show, it sucks. The Bucky Dillon Morning Show, it sucks.
Hi, folks. Larry Elder here. Thanks for listening to my show each weekday from 5 to 8 p.m. Have you heard how much KHNC, the Roar of the Rockies, has grown? A new lineup, big signal, and a rapidly growing audience. If you own a business and would like to reach a conservative, patriotic, Northern Colorado audience in a very affordable way, contact my friends at KHNC 970-587-5003 or email them at ontheair@khnc.net and tell them Larry sent you.
When dealing with a worldwide pandemic, remember to avoid, distance, and alienate yourself from friends, family, and neighbors. That way, when the crisis is over, no one will ask you to help them move, to borrow money, or bother you for a cup of sugar ever again. After all, who needs community anyway? This has been a public service announcement. Have a lovely day.
And we're back. This is the Bucky Dillon Morning Show, which, by the way, sucks.
The Bucky Dillon Show sucks. I got a kick out of that.
So, what are we talking about? Oh, there's no pump in the brakes on this
No.
local political agenda at this point. And gosh, it's so much of it just doesn't make any sense in practice. And
No.
and the gun thing is a perfect example.
Yeah.
94% of shootings occur in gun-free zones, right? The most
Right.
violent places in the country are the cities with the strictest gun laws, and yet they don't want to do anything about the border. And we know that illegal firearms are being smuggled across the border. So, and I'm not saying, of course, Fort Collins City Council has no control over the border, but Jared Polis has brought out the idea of making Colorado a sanctuary state. It might be.
Mhm.
I know he's trotted out the idea of making sure that undocumented immigrants here are eligible for certain services and benefits. Gosh, it is it is an interesting situation, isn't it?
Yeah, and and this is where I started going into some thoughts on what all this means, and then it reminded me that during the campaign, the biggest personal struggle that I had was trying to convince myself that this was important. And I do think that of all the elections that we get a chance to vote in, local elections probably the most important because it's going to impact your life the most. But I still just don't believe that politics should be all that important in our life. And I really had to try to convince myself that this matters so much that I need to go bother someone at home on a Saturday when they're spending time with their family or right before they sit down to have dinner in the evening and convince them that they need to take time to think about this stuff and vote for me. What's more important, really, is life, getting on with your life, having your show, making great moonshine, working in healthcare like I do, so many other things. And I think to normal, yeah, to most normal Americans, that's what really occupies your time because life is hard. Life is complicated. There's so much suffering and problems in the world. You're just doing your best to try to take care of your own and your family and make it one day to the next, 1 week to the next. And to pretend that politics is somehow the most important thing in our life, I just can't convince myself of that. And so that's where I started really thinking about this, and kind of what I wanted to talk with you about a little bit this morning is that I think as religion in the West starts to wane, that it is being replaced by the new secular religion of politics. And you see a religious fervor to both sides, honestly. And I saw this over and over during my campaign. People would say, are you Republican or Democrat? And I'd say, there's more choices than that, right? There's not just two. There's neither. There's like to hell with both of them. There's libertarian. There's all sorts of other choices. So it's not just those two. But people are so stuck on whose team are you on? They want to know, are you on my team or are you on the other team? And so I've really started wondering about this sort of politics as a secular religion and the fervor and the zealotry that goes into it. And you see this again with Biden. He's doing the same stuff on the border that Trump was doing, but when Biden does it, it's fine because he's on our team. When Trump does it, he's Hitler. Okay. You see it with Cuomo, right? The most handsy governor in all of America and the most offensive. But I mean, he's fine so far. He's managed to survive so far. But if anyone else does that, they're immediately perp walked out of the office, right? So but Cuomo's on their team. He's on the media's team. He's on the left's team. So he's sort of safe from all this. There's no rationality to it anymore at all. It's just a matter of whose team are you on? Whose religion are you choosing?
Are you supporting the agenda of my of my personalist epistemology? And it is really frustrating that it's come down to that, and that we've gotten to the point to where we castigate our fellow Americans in a more harsh way than we would Kim Jong-un, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think of the atrocities that are taking place in the world right now, and yet the conversations that we're having here at home all seem to be revolving around your team bad, this team bad.
Right.
When let's be honest, we are facing mutual challenges on an international scale and domestically as well.
Mm-hmm.
And two team dynamic, we can't seem to come to a rational conclusion on anything.
Mm-mm.
It is really frustrating. And I'm working to try to bridge that gap. One thing that I'm doing is making sure that I go out of my way to criticize people on my own side, especially when I see hypocrisy and when I see radicalization, because I think there's not very many people who are tuning into my show from a left-wing perspective. So given that that's the case, what is the most effective strategy I can to strengthen my epistemology and persuade people that I'm right? Well, I'm going to persuade people on the left that I'm right while talking to a conservative audience by de-radicalizing conservatives and making conservatives more palatable to the general population.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I have to overcome a lot of built-in prejudices in the minds of people throughout this country. But, we really have to do it. That's why I speak out about the Confederate flag. I understand that there is more context to the story than slavery versus not slavery.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more going on. There's financial interests, there's banking interests. There was foreign countries who were involved in the Civil War, and people didn't even realize that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot more going on than just that. And I appreciate people who understand that broader context and who are able to say that, the South with their wanting to decentralize the power of the government and allocate states' rights in a way that was more representative of what the founders believed. I actually do have some sympathy for that, but at the same time, there's a reason why CNN and New York Times and Washington Post and all of these other MSNBC, all of these other left-wing organizations will look at the Capitol riots, and they will intentionally use the photo of the guy holding a Confederate flag to put on the headline photo.
Oh, yeah.
Because it does the most damage. And so that's, I speak out against conservatives utilizing the Confederate flag, regardless of the context,
Mm-hmm.
even though, yeah, I agree. We should have a conversation about what were the other contexts, because people are selectively filtering out our history so that they can utilize historical injustices to push a particular narrative that helps their political agenda today. But it really does come down to perception on so many of these things and narratives. And gosh, it's a tough situation. It's a really tough situation. And it's almost too big for me to even get a grasp on. And that's why I focus so much on philosophy and history, because I think that those things are foundational. And regardless of the current events and the current narratives that we're navigating, if you have a better understanding of those two things in particular,
Yeah.
you will be better situated to make good decisions when faced with that narrative or that evidence. So you work in the healthcare industry.
Mm.
I'm curious your thoughts on universal healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading libertarian books recently. One book in particular, Anatomy of the State by Murray and Rothbard.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of he is anarcho-capitalist,
Mm-hmm.
reckless endangerment level libertarianism, which in my personal opinion takes just as much utopian faith as does the progressive left in a lot of ways.
Mm.
In humans behaving as you wish they would,
Mm-hmm.
instead of typically how they do. But he was telling a story about how he came to the decision that he was actually an anarcho-capitalist and he was having a debate conversation with some friends of his that were on the left, and they asked him, how do you feel about public police services and emergency services, right? Because if you can justify what essentially amounts to socializing emergency response services such as police and firefighting, why can't we justify doing that with healthcare? Why can't we justify doing that with oil? That's a key industry, right?
Yeah.
Energy. Why can't we justify doing that with steel? Why can't we justify doing that with agriculture? And it led him to the rift in his own belief system, where he had to decide: am I for fully privatizing the police, or am I a socialist? Right? Am I giving credence to the left? Am I a liberal?
Yeah.
And in his mind, there was just no stepping into that territory. And so he decided that, well, gosh, I'm kind of cornered here. I have to go full-blown libertarian. And my personal opinion is that things can be socialized in an appropriate way, in an effective way, and that things can be privatized in an effective and appropriate way. And I have had a hard time finding conservatives and libertarians that can really articulate to me how privatized police forces and emergency services can be done in an effective and, I hate to use the term equitable, but equitable way. And it really does put you in a kind of position. So what is your stance on universal health care?
We already have socialized medicine in the United States. If you think of it as a spectrum, 0% being completely free and 100%, takeover of an economy being complete socialism. Well, Medicare constitutes about 40% of healthcare spending in the U.S. already. So we're already almost halfway to socialization if you just take Medicare. If you add the fact that there are 50 states that each have a division of insurance that regulate health insurance, then you just continue down that spectrum. When you add all the laws, everything that goes into the healthcare today, it's the most heavily regulated industry in the U.S. probably, then we're already well past 50% of our way towards socialization. So the criticism that some people have of, free market healthcare doesn't work. Well, we don't know that because we haven't really tried it. I think we should give it a try. It does work because people get to voluntarily make their own decisions, and that creates accountability. The problem with healthcare right now, I think the biggest problem, if you could summarize it in one word, I heard there's three kinds of people. People who divide the world into two camps and people who don't. And sorry, I got that all wrong. There's three kinds of people in the world: people who know math and people who don't. It's three.
So I know what camp you're in.
But if you oversimplify all the challenges in healthcare, I think it comes down to a lack of accountability. Hospitals aren't accountable to people. Payers aren't accountable to people. The pharmaceutical companies aren't accountable to people. There's an immunity process there. So there's a lack of accountability in the entire system that doesn't exist anywhere in the free market. The free choices, and there's accountability that makes whenever you make that choice. It's totally missing in healthcare, so prices skyrocket because there's nothing to prevent them from skyrocketing. So if you want to have control over healthcare costs, which are far too high, then you have to have that accountability. And socialized healthcare does not do that.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to ask you a few more questions when we come back from the break. Guys, if you're listening, consider going to 1360khnc.com and hitting the shop button. You're listening to The Bucky Dillon Show right here on 1360 KHNC.
Be careful when you're dealing with a conspiracy theorist. You may end up with a whole lot more truth than you're used to handling. This has been a public service announcement from KHNC.
It is not because men have made laws that life, liberty, and property exist. On the contrary, it is because life, liberty, and property existed beforehand that men made laws in the first place. What then is law? It is the collective organization of the individual right to lawful defense and punishing injustice. Frederick Bastiat, The Law.
Down your driveway and say, my guys aren't going down there. Or are there parts of it that just need a little more sun? Then call Affordable Tree at 970-568-6898. We can climb, cut, or trim your problems away, specializing in defensive space, upper and lower fire mitigation, forest health, plus we can save freshly hit beetle trees. So call us at 568-6898. That's 568-6898.
Hi, folks. I'm James Morgan, a realtor with Grisham and Associates, LLC. I know it must seem like there's a million realtors out there making all kinds of promises. Want to hear my big marketing promise? I promise honest and fair dealings with all those I do business with. That may sound old-fashioned, and it is not very catchy, but it is true. I am your Colorado real estate specialist. Farm, land, mountain cabins, or urban dwellings. When you work with my team, we'll get the right property for you and be upfront and honest with you every step of the way. Over the years, my clients have told me just that fact alone separates us from others in the industry. If you are considering buying or selling real estate, call me, James Morgan, at 720-203-0731 or visit my website at coloradoproperties.online. No catchy slogan, just a client-first, honest real estate experience. Hit it, girls.
Keep listening to the American Freedom Network.
The Federal Reserve is in control of our money, but lately control is the last word you would use to describe the Fed. Emergency rate cuts, huge increases in their balance sheet, the constant blowing of bubbles and boom and bust cycles that just leave most of us busted. I'm Joe Jaquin, owner of the Patriot Trading Group, and we have been protecting people's wealth for almost 25 years. Stop playing the Fed's game and get your wealth protected. Call us at 800-951-0592 or visit our website at allamericangold.com.
I told you so.
We here at KHNC are looking for new conspiracy theories because all the old ones have become fact. This has been a public service announcement from KHNC.
You ever listen to Chinese punk music?
I thought that was Crystal Gale.
No, it's some band. They're called like SNZB or something, and they are openly anti-communist, anti-government, but they're in
dead?
China.
Oh, they're actually still.
They're in China. They only play like totally underground gigs.
I would think so.
And it's real punk music. It's not like the punk music here that's like,
yeah, that
my
like
middle
Johnny
class
Rotten.
white parents made me go to church and I'm pissed. Yeah, it's punk music that actually takes balls and real rebellion.
Yeah, that sounded like Johnny.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Okay. May they live long and prosper and not be found in an alley dead.
Oh, right. Or publicly executed. They still do that in China.
Ooh.
Yeah, but one of my my wife's students who went over there and ended up marrying a girl, he saw someone get executed in the street.
What do they do? Is it hanging? How do they do it?
I think they were just shot.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah, man.
That's still awful.
Yeah, it's a complicated world, but you know, I've decided I'm a little too close to China to really vent my true feelings. You know, my wife and daughter are inevitably going to China. I'm inevitably going back to China at some point. My wife is actively talking about wanting to consider moving back to China. So, Yeah, maybe I'll let somebody
Maybe
else
Weld
speak
County
on that
can
issue.
secede instead of going to Wyoming, can just become a nation state of China like Hong Kong.
Well, hey, if they keep buying up our properties and our government keeps allowing
there you
them to
go.
do so,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed the ridiculous level of farmland that China has been outright purchasing, and part of it is Chinese citizens can't own land in China. There's no private property, so even if you purchase your house after, I don't remember if it's 70 or it's 99 years. I think it started out as 99, but then became 70 years. After 70 years, the government reestablishes ownership of your property, and you have to repurchase it back. So a lot of Chinese
I'm going to try that with some of the homes that I'm looking to sell.
Yeah,
get it for 70 years, but then you have to buy it back from me.
Right. Or just sell it to the Chinese, because they're looking for ways to, wealthy Chinese people obviously want to invest in property, and they want to be able to continue to pass that wealth and that asset down to their children. And so what they do, instead of buying property in China, is they come buy property here. And apparently we have no rules or regulations against Chinese citizens purchasing and owning plots of land here in the US, and they're buying it up. And Bill Gates has been buying up tons of farmland too.
Something smells fishy with all this.
Yeah, it is
going on here.
It is suspicious that we crack down so hard on our own citizens for so many things, and yet we just let foreign countries, who are for the most part adversaries of our interests, literally buy the land.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's not selling out your country, then that is the definition of selling out your country.
Well, there's something city council should take up, is foreign ownership of good American land.
Yeah.
Yeah. I doubt it. That makes too much sense.
Have you been following the city council meetings at all?
No, not really. The new city council was actually seated last Tuesday, so I don't think they've done much yet. They have a retreat where they get together and come up with their priorities this coming weekend, May 7th, 8th, something like that. So they'll come out of that with their priorities for the new city council. And it's going to be increasing the minimum wage, gun control, like I said, ranked choice voting.
Equity and inclusion.
Equity and inclusion sprinkled all throughout, of course. They'll give a nod to the economy because they have to, coming out of COVID, but none of them, not one of them, with the exception of maybe Shirley in District 4, the only one who, with any common sense, who got elected. None of them know anything about the economy. So they don't know because they're also going to prioritize the minimum wage increase above that, which is just an economy killer. Small job killer, entry-level job killer. It makes it hard for teenagers to get any experience. So that'll be a priority, and all sorts of silliness against development, and not really dealing with any serious issues. So, but that's what the voters wanted, and so that's we're going to see. We're going to see what that looks like.
It went hard. So that's real exciting stuff. Yeah. So as far as universal health care,
it's the same. Economics don't change when you go from one industry to the next. So think of gas lines in the 1970s when there was controls on OPEC production, and they tried to cap gas prices because of that, and that just led to shortages and all sorts of stuff. Economics don't change just because you've changed industries. So with universal health care, you'll have quality will suffer. There will be demand that can't be kept up with. Doctors aren't going to want to perform the services that they perform now if they're not going to get paid as much. That's also human nature, and you can't change that. I don't care what law you pass. So everything in healthcare will get much worse. There will be less innovation. There will be a greater backlog. And we don't need to theorize about this. It's happening all over the world in these places that have tried it. No one goes to Great Britain to have to
Really
heal
serious surgery.
Yeah, and even I know Canada doesn't quite have this problem, but it is fairly common for Canadians when they have serious medical issues to come down to the United States to get those taken care of. So we do have a lot of problems in healthcare in the U.S. No question about it. It is, well, I like to say it's a broken system. It's not broken. The system is doing exactly what it's meant to do, which is to remove accountability.
Right.
And that's exactly what some of the big players in healthcare want, because then they can just have runaway prices. So there's a lot that's messed up in the system right now. It's not perfect, but universal healthcare is no way to solve it. None.
Right. It seems to me that one of the biggest issues we have is that the pharmaceutical companies and others in the medical profession have utilized government regulations to protect themselves and crush their competitors, and in many ways illegalize innovations that would displace so many of the things that are malfunctioning. My first hour was all about CBD, and I genuinely believe that the reason cannabis is still largely illegal in the United States is because it would displace so many of the pharmaceutical companies' interests, because it's difficult to centralize. And I'll touch on this when we come back from the break. Guys, thanks for listening to the Bucket Dillon Show right here on 1360 KHNC.
Hi, this is Bob Enyart with Colorado Rights Alive. Please work to abolish abortion, but reject all so-called pro-life efforts to regulate child killing. Even on the surface, regulations undermine the very concept of the right to life, and they convince even our own judges, tragically, that the fetus they consent to killing must not be a real child. See AmericanRTL.org/regulations for more.
Reasons to own gold. Brought to you by the Patriot Trading Group at allamericangold.com. Reason number 647.
Most people don't even know that the courts have already ruled once money is deposited into the bank owns the money, and the depositor is merely an unsecured creditor of the bank, which means if the bank goes under, you get paid last. After the financial crisis, instead of breaking up too big to fail, the government and the Federal Reserve created Dodd-Frank and made too big to fail banks even bigger, while putting your deposits more at risk. I'm Joe Jaquint, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group. To learn more, visit us at allamericangold.com or call us at 800-951-0592.
Honorary Forest Ranger Betty White here, lending a hand to my dear friend Smokey Bear, because for 75 years, he's only said,
only you can prevent wildfires.
But there's a lot more to say. Like if you park your car on tall, dry grass, the hot exhaust pipe can start a wildfire. So be careful out there. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Woo! Ah.
It's a trap.
Moonshine is strong.
I don't know about you. I'm just eating the delicious blueberries.
Oh man, these blueberries are killing me, man. So, okay.
You're talking about CBD.
CBD.
Yeah, cannabis, antidepressants, the pharmaceutical industry.
A huge part of the reason why it was illegalized in the first place is because it went against the financial and political interests in the country. So just a quick recap. Henry Anslinger was head of the Federal Bureau of Drugs and Narcotics. Now, this was coming off of the heels of Prohibition.
Okay.
Obviously, making alcohol illegal was unfeasible and unsustainable in the United States and probably anywhere else in the world because people love their alcohol.
Mhm.
I love alcohol. You love alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
People love it. Bars, I mean, there's a reason why we shut down everything. We kept the liquor stores open.
Mm-hmm.
On the heels of alcohol becoming legalized, he wanted to try to find a way to justify that massive budget that was put in place for the Federal Bureau of Drugs and Narcotics to justify trying to enforce anti-alcohol laws, right? So he was like, we need to find something that is common, something that is widely used, that we can make illegal, therefore justifying this immense budget and providing me with some job security. So the first thing Henry Anslinger did was go looking for allies that would help him push the narrative that marijuana was this big threat to society. And he ended up hooking up with William Randolph Hearst. Now, William Randolph Hearst was synonymous to like Rupert Murdoch. He was the big media mogul of that time. He dominated the publishing industry.
Yeah.
This was back before you had TV, all this. So it was newspapers. He owned a bunch of paper mills and even swaths of forest. He utilized these paper mills for his newspapers. Now hemp provided a far superior paper. People don't realize that one of the first drafts of the Declaration of Independence was written on cannabis paper. In 1619, King George I actually declared, this is in documents in Virginia, that all colonists were to grow cannabis to be exported back to Britain. He didn't want to compete with hemp because of an invention called the decorticator. Now, the decorticator made it so that you didn't have to rely on slave labor to process hemp fibers to be utilized for paper and all kinds of other products. And that's one more industry that was being disrupted by hemp. And they actually utilized white racism in Hearst's publications to push that we should make marijuana illegal. He said, first off, the term marijuana comes from a Mexican wild tobacco plant. It has nothing to do with cannabis whatsoever. But they utilized white racism to push the idea that Mexicans and African Americans were smoking pot and raping white women. And this was successful at that time in American history. And this kind of goes to show you that political agencies, such as the federal department, the Federal Bureau of Drugs and Narcotics, has its own agenda. That agenda is not to protect you from harmful substances. That agenda is to justify their budget and to give them job security, right? They will team up with their cultural opinion molders, such as William Randolph Hearst, such as mainstream media outlets, to protect their interests, and they will utilize whatever cultural means to do so, whether that's racism, whether that's anti minority racism, or whether that's anti majority racism. They don't care what kind of racism it is. They want to keep people divided because it helps them sell you on the idea that the government should expand their power and protect the financial interests of themselves and their buddies.
Yeah, crony capitalism. Yeah.
It is just so evident to me that the reason the pharmaceutical companies want CBD to be highly regulated, want it to be a prescription only product, is because they want it. Now, the reason marijuana isn't legal right now is because everyday citizens can grow it in their closet. It grows quickly. It grows in almost any climate. It has almost no negative health side effects. It is almost impossible for them to centralize and monopolize that industry. And how much money have they spent protecting opiate fields all over the world. How much money have they spent lobbying our legislators to protect the interests of the pharmaceutical companies? That would all be undone if an effective product like CBD were highly accessible to the public and decentralized. It would wreck their industry in so many ways. Everybody knows that people are dying all around the country from opioid abuse, and it's largely stemming from pharmaceutical companies testing their own products and and collaborating with the FDA to let that happen.
Pushing it. I mean, really pushing it too. There are entire regions of the country that have been completely obliterated because of this stuff.
Right. And I mean, it is only to support the political and financial interests of the elite and the pharmaceutical companies that cannabis isn't widely legal and celebrated in this country, even though, gosh, it's useful for so many things.
Yeah.
Whether it's paper, whether it's there's a video from like the 1930s where these men are beating a car with a hammer and it's not even denting the exterior of this vehicle. And apparently this is a vehicle made from hemp fiber. Yeah, there's just so many industries that we're going to be disrupted by this kind of innovation. They don't, and the government and the financial powers that have established themselves don't want innovation and disruption. You're listening to the Mike Show right here, 1360 KHNC.
Have you always wanted to be on the radio? Do you have strong opinions or ideas that you think should be heard? Why not host your own radio show right here on the Roar of the Rockies? You'll be on the same station as Brian Kilmeade, Michael Savage, and Alex Jones. You can brand yourself as an expert in your industry and grow your business. Imagine telling your potential clients you have your own radio show. That gives you instant credibility. For more information, call us at 970-587-5003. A lot of radio stations boast about having 2, 3, 4, 500,000 listeners. But what they don't tell you is the average listener only listens for 4 minutes. A song plays they don't like, same old boring commentary, or worse yet, as soon as the commercial starts playing, they change the station. Here at 1360 KHNC, our listeners listen longer, a lot longer. We have one of the longest time spent listening in the industry. That means our listeners don't change the dial when the commercial starts playing because they don't want to miss what our hosts have to say next. Advertise with 1360 KHNC and have your message be heard. Call us at 970-587-5003. We also have the best rates in Colorado. 970-587-5003 or 1360khnc.com.
Do you need your fireplace clean? Not sure if your fireplace is working right or not sure if the fireplace is efficient? Call Abundant Flame at 970-966-0217 to schedule your appointment. We service all brands of gas fireplaces, freestanding and built-ins, pellet stoves, wood fireplaces, and electric fireplaces. Visit us at Abundant-Flame or call 970-966-0217.
The Liberty Revolt is supported by viewers like you. Consider making a donation via Venmo at Liberty Revolt Media or going to the website, libertyrevoltmedia.com, and hitting the donation button. It really does keep us in the fight. Thank you.
You're listening to the Bucky Dillon Show right here on 1360 KHNC, and you may be tuning into the live stream. If you are, may I recommend unliking, unfollowing, unsubscribing. Do not hit the bell. Do not get the notifications. In fact, please dox me on Antifa blog forums. It really does help my competitors. Thank you.
You're bold man.
So what's your plan from here?
You tell me.
I mean, Gavin, Run for office. Do it.
I really don't know. My wife asked, "You're going to run again in 4 years, aren't you?" And I was like, I don't. I don't know, and I really don't. I am very concerned about the importance that politics is playing in our life, and I think it's way too much. And so I just don't know how to contribute to that. And what I'd rather do is spend 4 years mocking and ridiculing these people and letting them know that they're tiny little people, that they're unimportant, and that they aren't going to have the control over my life that they want. And the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is indifference. And I think that's what politics deserves in our life, is indifference. We need to go about living our lives and living the most fulfilling, rewarding life that we can. That's what brings real happiness. Maybe it's just that I'm in a sour state of mind right now because I'm just coming off of this very embarrassing defeat. But it might change. And I just don't like politics as a team sport. When you have to reflexively behave a certain way or think a certain way, I just really don't like that. And when everyone's trying to figure out, what label to place on me, I have a guttural, visceral reaction to that. I just don't like it because, judge me as an individual, not because I belong to team A or team B, as you said earlier. I think that's fair. So I don't know. I am very concerned about the way things are going, and I do want to play a role in that. I think it's important that we all serve our community in some way or another. And so I'm trying to figure out how to, exactly how that's going to take shape.
Yeah, I've been having a lot of conversations. I recently met with Ryan Gonzalez. He's like a 27-year-old who just ran for Congress. I want to say District 7, Colorado. And he's planning to run again in the fall, and I might end up being his communications guy. We'll see. But he's going to come on the show again. There actually is a lot of activity going on as far as conservatives and libertarians, and a lot of it is being done through Republican Party, and I go back and forth on that because I myself would be offended and feel slimy if someone called me a Republican. I have never gone out and said that I am a Republican, and I don't like it, and I don't like the idea of us hopping on the Republican train as liberty-minded people, because I feel like they are just like the Democrats in so many ways, as far as being bought off by these financial powers and in league with the expansion of government as long as it suits their agenda. And the war on drugs is evidence of that.
Or just war in general.
And war in general. They've become a little more isolationist, but sometimes you have to utilize the powers or the levers that actually work to make a difference. And maybe we need to reform the party.
Yeah.
From the inside. I don't know. It's a tough conversation. You're listening to the Bucky Dillon Show. Guys, thanks for hanging out. I sure do appreciate you.
Hi,
Have
folks.
a wonderful
Brian
day.
Kilmeade here. Thanks for listening to my show each weekday from 7 till 9 a.m. Have you heard how much KHNC, the Roar of the Rockies, has grown? Got a new lineup, big signal, and rapidly growing audience. So if you own a business and would like to reach a conservative, patriotic, Northern Colorado audience in a very affordable way, contact my buddies, my friends at KHNC, 970-587-5003, or email them at ontheair@khnc.net. That's 970-587-5003. Tell them Brian Kilmeade sent you.
Back in the USSR.
Socialism, like the ancient ideas from which it springs, confuses the distinction between government and society. As a result, every time we object to a thing being done by government, the socialists conclude we object to it being done at all. We disapprove of state education. The socialists say we are opposed to any education. Socialism. Frederick Bastiat, The Law.
Back in the USSR.